Welcome, everybody. We are in our first night of developing ASP.NET web applications. We are about to review the syllabus, and I'm going to be going through this incrementally here. And then if you have any questions as we proceed, please feel free to unmute and ask them, or if you'd like, you can just drop it into the chat window, and I will monitor the chat and then read the question and provide the response. We are here in the summer semester of 2021. We are operating on an 8-week condensed schedule for this particular course. And I really want to explain to you what that means. Normally, when we run our semesters here at Gateway, we now have a 14-week standard semester. And I know that those of you that have been here for a while probably have heard me over and over talking about our 15-week, semesters. And yes, we recently officially changed institution-wide that all 3 of our semesters, fall, spring, and summer, are now 14 weeks. And there's a couple of benefits to this. That means that we all get, in some cases, extra time off either between semesters and more importantly, for the holiday break in the winter. So instead of starting like brutally early in January, we are now waiting a week or two and getting into mid-January before our spring semester starts. And I think that a lot of people really like that. I know that I did this past winter, being able to just kind of bunker in with the family for a good month over the holidays was really kind of a welcome retreat. It was almost a solid month off. Uh, and, for all of you that are students, you get it. If you're working a job and you're doing school, it's a lot, and it's a lot for us instructors as well. So we welcome that 14-week change. However, we also, in the summertime, strategically take several of our IT courses and offer them in this 8-week format to give people, basically the ability to have a little bit of their summer off, but still be able to get their courses complete. ASP.NET being a 3rd semester course in the web program, and so if you were following the regular full-time sequence, you would take all your courses in fall, all your courses in spring, and then by the time you get to that 3rd semester, which is summer, this is one of the main courses that you take in our program. And I always like to inform students that, hey, sometimes if you miss this course in the summer, um, sometimes you end up waiting a whole year before you can take it again. So that's why I'm glad to see that all of you are enrolled in this section. And we don't have a super huge group. And as I was mentioning, kind of like pre the video starting, that's pretty normal once we clear those first 2 semesters, because roughly, a third to half of our students come here for the 1-year diploma, and then the remainder stay for the 2-year. And the 2-year, of course, is the smart move because you're learning some very important technologies towards the end of it, and then you start to do significantly more project work. Now, in terms of the fact that this is a stacked section, so I want to kind of explain what that means, and I'm going to show you a couple of different views here. So first, I'm highlighting in the syllabus here the 2 sections of this course that are running linked together, and this is very common for people taking evening web courses. And so, typically we'll run 1 or 2 sections of a class in the evenings during a semester. And depending on enrollment, obviously 3rd semester courses usually have 1 offering, by the way, and we link them together. So the people that are enrolled in what we call the asynchronous or fully online section are not required to come to this session. And in fact, they'll get all the same assignments, all the same due dates, but those people will basically rely on, their own self-study discipline and my videos to get the work done. And for some people, that's great. It works, and we can all succeed that way. And the general pattern for web over the last like 15 years here at Gateway has been that about 2/3 to 3/4 of our students are fully online anyhow. Many of you that are in this session right now, and we're doing this via Zoom here in the summer of 2021, have been used to the Zoom, or what we call OSync, which is online synchronous format, and you consider this like your normal classroom. So I'm looking at the faces in my room here. Well, your names in the Zoom session, not your faces, but whatever. And we've gotten to know each other, and we've never met in person, which I think is kind of interesting when you think about that. I will let you know that the plan for most of our IT programs is to be fully back on campus in the fall. And I think the one exception is the data program does both face-to-face and online, and people who are in the software developer program. And I don't know if any of you are double dipping, doing web and software, but if you're doing the software developer program, that's going to be all Zoom for fall as well. And then they will split to being half Zoom by next spring. Um, with web, we're kind of in a kind of a different type of position, right? Because this stacked approach where we have an online and a face-to-face um, is our normal offering pattern always. And whenever we have a face-to-face class, so like the people that would normally come to this Zoom session normally would be walking into a classroom on the Racine campus, technical building, third floor at this hour, and we'd be sitting in the same room together doing our work. Um, but that, you know, that aspect of it always seem to like not form a connection great with the people who are strictly online. And so what we always offer to those people that are in the linked online session, they can join these Zoom sessions even when we're in the classroom. And so whenever you see one of these offerings and it has one of these 1W7As and it's a web class, most likely it is linked to another class, and whatever Zoom session is attributed to that class, you are welcome to attend. Of course, most of us will record videos as well. But it's not quite the same. Like if you have a question, like if you're doing something and you get stuck, well, then you're stuck emailing, right? Or whatever to try to get a response. Whereas if you're in the session, hey, you know, you get your question answered right away. You can interact with your peers. It's a better, richer experience. So that's why when the pandemic kicked in, Christian, Christopher, and Wendy and I were all like, oh, just another day at the office, because we all of our classes were zoomed and recorded anyhow. So, but just please plan that, for fall, if you want the face-to-face experience, come to the classrooms, and it'd be actually super cool to meet you in person. But I know for some of you that's not feasible. Like Tom, I think you're up north, and Sam, I'm not sure where you are right now, right? You kind of float around, and that's the other awesome thing about this is you can still participate. And so the one thing I was going to mention to some of you, and Tom, I see that you kind of caught the hint in the pre-announcements, is we have a pretty small group here. In fact, I only have 2 registered for the Zoom portion of the class, which puts us technically in directed study status, so we can kind of like change our times and meeting parameters, let's just put it that way. But I might encourage you guys, and if you guys are okay with this, to actually switch formally to the 1W7A section. I don't know if there's a cost differential. Tom, would you be able to answer that part of it? Did you have to pay an additional fee to switch?
I couldn't answer that.
Okay, well, it was worth asking at least. Somehow I think maybe the online classes cost like $10 or $20 more. I'm not really sure, so you might want to ask student services on that one. I will still plan to have these sessions as per normal. And the format of this class, by the way, is what I would call a tutorial style approach. And so, in other words, instead of giving you a bunch of lecture concepts and then, here's an example, okay, here's the assignment, good luck. It's more like all 3 of those pieces are kind of wrapped up into what we just do in class. And so we will step through all the materials in the book and we will complete all the exercises collaboratively together during the live session. And now from some approaches, people are like, well, I can just do that on my own. Absolutely, you sure can. But what you will discover is technology changes and it changes quickly. And we use a particular book for a reason. And you'll notice that the book was created with Visual Studio 2012, which is now, several versions old. So the screens you see in the book and the instructions you get in the book don't always match, so that causes some issues for people. Now, I have created a number of videos over time in teaching this class that cover all the different versions from 2012 on up, and they're all embedded into the course shell. And so like if you're like using Visual Studio 2012 because that's just what you have and you don't want to switch, well, there's videos for you. And if you're using 2019, which is what I'm going to recommend, well, there's videos for that too. So, and everything in between, by the way. Um, and the fun part about this is because we are in a tutorial style, we really kind of can relax the approach a little bit and get a lot more conversational. And in some ways, I think kind of have fun with it, frankly, while learning something new and cool. Um, in this particular class, folks, we are basically going to scratch the surface on this technology. And then as we get into .NET 2, we start to dig deeper. We will still be doing some very powerful things, but as you kind of like learn as you're learning, that there's so much to learn about any particular technology. There's only so deep you can really go in a three um, credit course. Um, so in some cases, you will see introductions to ways of doing things, and then it's really kind of just to get your wheels turning and what step could I take next. And in other cases, we dig a little bit deeper. But mostly we are looking at how this technology operates, what the techniques are for working with the technology, learning all the different languages and syntax and the troubleshooting techniques, and then more importantly, in my opinion, learning the tool that we're going to use, which is one of the most important tools for people working in the coding world, which is Microsoft Visual Studio. Um, and we'll talk about that and get to installing it this evening, by the way. So for those of you that don't already have it installed, one part of what I will be doing here in class is doing the install and recording the installation. And what's kind of neat is I'm starting with a blank machine here. So I'm on a brand new school laptop, well, relatively brand new, and does not have that tool installed yet. So it'll make a perfect, you know, recording candidate, basically. So, because usually I already have it installed and then I'm just kind of coaching people on how to install it. But here you can actually watch me install and follow along. So I think that's kind of neat. All right. Let's take a look at some of the other stuff here. So if you're in the 1WY1 section, you have to be here Monday uh, from now until August 9th, from 5:30 to 9:30 p.m. As I mentioned, we are kind of in directed study mode, so we do get some ability to kind of adjust that a little bit, and we'll talk about it as we get rolling with the class. But the plan is, and the one I plan to stick with is, we'll start every Monday at 5:30 and run till 9:30. Um, if you are in the 1W7A section, attending the Zoom sessions is not required. It's fully online asynchronous. And then what I suggest to you is use the videos to kind of replace that classroom experience if you need to. We will be done with this class on August 9th, 2021. The semester formally ends the Friday following. And the way that the systems work here at Gateway, if this ends on 8/9, I have to post your grades by August 11th. And so when you look at the course calendar, you'll notice kind of some of those dates. We are not on campus, unfortunately, but if you do ever find yourself on campus and you're in the technical building and want to stop by my office, I am in room T312. Interestingly, I've actually been on campus recently. In fact, I was there twice the previous week and once last week, which is a whole lot. Actually saw my coworkers and we were in the building without masks on and stuff. What a weird thing that was. It was almost like normal, except there was like nobody there because everybody's online still. Um, but if you're ever on campus, room T312, by the way, is the one, there's a kind of like a side hallway that goes towards the west side of the building. And our office is right by the entrance of that building. When you guys do finally come to campus, if you do, um, I'll be happy to give you guys a tour. And in fact, for anybody that's new, I always like to do that, just to see our cool facilities, because we really do have some pretty cutting edge labs and classrooms. Um, and in my mind, it's still better to learn in person. That's my perspective on it. All right, let's take a look at the course specific stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and read this. Um, it says, this course will introduce students to the .NET framework tools technologies to develop ASP.NET applications. Focus will be on coding activities that improve performance and scalability of website applications. We're going to do a little bit of an introduction to MVC. but MVC is the style of architecture that we will, by the way, predominantly use in ASP.NET 2. And then we'll compare that with the more traditional web forms approach, um, and why we use what and why we use it, basically. All right. In terms of the required course materials, and we have a couple different versions of this book that we can use. So they have one version that's just entitled Beginning ASP.NET 4.5 and one that's a 4.5.1. And at this point, I believe the bookstore has this one listed, and so I marked this as the preferred book. I will tell you that as I'm working through the exercises, I think my PDF copy is this one. Oh no, wait, hold on a second. No, okay, never mind. I have the 4.5.1, so I'm going to be following that one from my Vital Source bookshelf. Um, my recommendation for this book, by the way, is if you at all can, uh, buy a cheap copy. There's lots of used copies because the published date on this is fairly old. And in many cases, you can get e-copies. And I think if you're smart and you shop around for a used copy, you might be able to find one for really pretty affordably. And once I know that everybody here has obtained a copy of the book, I will also go ahead and release a PDF version that I have accessible within the course shell. But it is required that everybody owns or rents a copy so that we're all legal. We do want the author to make his money since we're using his materials. In terms of what software and tools and hardware that we need, and I'm hoping you guys read my announcements really carefully. This is a class that you must perform with Microsoft Windows, and I know that at least for a couple of you that might be an issue. So if you are in that scenario, so if you're on the Mac OS or some Linux distro, you either need to look at running some sort of an emulator or like Docker or something to get the thing running. Not recommended, by the way, but I know people do it that way. But what I would suggest more strongly if you're a Mac or a Linux person is consider either dual booting to Windows or running Windows as a virtual machine. If you do have problems with any of that, we have a third kind of option for you, which would be this virtual desktop interface environment we have now at Gateway called V2 Cloud, which allows us to access, a Windows 10 desktop environment with the tools preloaded. But then when you use this tool, you're relying a lot on your bandwidth and a remote server, and your files aren't on your own machine, that type of thing. So I would consider that a safety net only. Now, if you are working on a Windows PC, which I assume most of you are, that is the standard for our degree program, by the way. It becomes very important that you have a machine that is robust. So when you start out in the web program, we tell you, hey, you got to get gear that's good, and it's got to have so much RAM and so much whatever. Well, here's where it really starts to kind of impact what you're doing. Microsoft Visual Studio, which is our primary piece of software here, is quite a large product. In fact, if you're brave and you do a full install on it, I know some people do that. You can easily exceed 100 gigabytes of storage on your hard drive. So like equivalent to like some big video game or something where you're loading all your DLCs and stuff. So a significant disk space. In terms of the tools that we need for this course, our install usually ends up somewhere in the 30 to 40 gigabyte range. But that's still a lot. And for some of you, you might want to actually like go to your file folder, and pull up File Explorer and then maybe click on, this PC and then just make sure it'll fit, And if you guys had classes with me last semester and I was using my older machine, and I was like redlining all my drives, because that's what happens when you install all these huge IDEs. But you can see I have a comfortable amount of space on my machine, so no problems there at all. But check that, make sure that you have enough space. And as part of your space consideration, let's say your hard drive has like 40 gig free and you're like, I'm fine. I would say, no, you're not. The reality on really any, modern computer system as a safe, zone is you usually want to leave like 10% of your drive free, just to ensure solid system performance. And you can see my drive is about a terabyte, so I would shoot to have, somewhere around 100 gigs free at all time. Um, and if you have, let's say, like a 500 gig SSD, having 50 gig free after you install Visual Studio is a good target. And so, like, if you have a 500 gig drive and you got 400 gigs worth of stuff on it, you're kind of right on, you'll be okay, but you're on that cusp of like, you're going to fill up your hard drive here real soon. And I want you to think about that, because it does become important. Um, and so maybe if your drive is overburdened, you want to think about clearing some files off of there, or compressing some, or coming up with a different strategy. That is pretty darn important. Um, I do recommend that if you're on Windows, well, you should be on Windows. You should be using Windows 10 at this point, and we strongly suggest that you're on either Windows 10 Education or Windows 10 Professional if you can afford the license. The education version of Windows does give you all the features of the professional and enterprise versions of Windows without the cost or the organizational requirements that go with it. Um, and I would say that for people who are aspiring IT professionals, that's really the version you should be using. And one thing I will cover tonight is how to get uh, the Windows 10 product key from Azure. And I'm just making a note here in my notebook as I'm writing this because I didn't have that on my list. So if you're not running the Pro version, you might want to consider running the Education or Pro versions. Um, and there's no cost involved if you're already on a Windows machine, by the way. All right. In terms of what our competencies are for the course, I want you to take a look at this list here real quick, and I know you can read it for yourself, so I don't really need to, spill them back to you. But the plan is pretty straight ahead. Excuse me. Um, and we're kind of looking at the technology, how it works, how to like design in this environment, and we will be doing a combination of uh, ultimately following all the book exercises so you learn all the things you need to learn to work with this. And then we're also going to create a project like we do in many of our web classes. Um, and I just want to get you thinking on this right away. If you're going to be working on a project for this class, one possibility is to take one of the projects that you've done in a previous course and just try to do it with this technology. Or you might go, oh, wow, I can take the static website that I made in the JavaScript class and I could bring this into .NET and take it to the next level, that type of thing. For others, you might come up with a completely fresh idea. As we start to get into a few weeks in here, I will ask you to start building that website for your project. So we're going to kind of do in increments until I have you come up with an idea, a basic design, and get the framework going, and then we'll start putting stuff in there. The hope is ultimately that by following the book learning and then working on a project of your own, you get a fuller, more complete experience out of it. One thing that we will not be doing, and this is pretty important, is ASP.NET is not a technology like HTML, JavaScript, CSS, PHP, MySQL, all those tools where we can push stuff to Apollo and then look at it on the web. This technology requires a Windows server, and a Windows server that is built to be a web server and deliver web applications. And that is not something where we can provide a hosting account for you like we have with Apollo. But all of our own personal machines have the capability to do that. And I will demonstrate for you how to do that same technique on a real live Windows server. I'm going to say time permitting. I don't know if we got that far last summer, and I think it was perhaps because of the pandemic. But most semesters we usually, if we have, projects that are outstanding, I can sometimes take those, put them on our server, and deliver them live. There's a different way of delivering applications, which is part of the learning process here too. Um, let's move on to the grading area here. And you guys have had me so many times now, you kind of know my whole routine. Participation is 15 points. Once again, I issue 7 of those points by halfway through the class, and the other 8 towards the end. Um, since technically this is already midterm week, by the way, so the people that started at the beginning of summer semester, they're doing their midterm exams right now, and they're due by Friday, basically, or Thursday night, I think. Um, and so you guys are starting at the halfway point. So we still will have a midterm, and I'll still have midterm participation points, but those will be roughly issued 4 weeks in an 8-week course. You know, kind of a no-brainer. 70% of your points will be on the assignments themselves, and then there will be 15 points total that are attributed to the midterm and final exam. The midterm is 5 points, the final is 10 points. We also have a final project, and in the final week of class, that final project is worth 8 points, but some of the interim tasks that lead to it are worth another 5 or 7 points. So that final project has a pretty heavy weight to it as well. Altogether, you will have 100 points on the table that you can earn. And you guys know I grade on a 1-point system, so 1 point equals 1%. So it's not unusual to have assignments that are 1 point, 2 points, 3 points, 5 points. If I remember right, most of our weekly assignments tend to be in the like 4 or 5 point range per assignment. So like a weekly assignment is basically equivalent to the midterm exam. And you know, if you're sitting with the choice of like, do I do the midterm or do I get my assignment done? I would say you're probably better off doing your assignment. You can turn in the midterm late. And um, by the way, midterm exam does not have a late penalty on it, for those of you that are wondering. We use our standard gateway grading scale here, and all of you guys are IT experts here by now, and you know the whole thing that you have to get up to this C level or 74 points in order to have this course count towards your degree program. If you do not reach that threshold, you will have to retake the course in order to graduate successfully. If I see it kind of heading that way that you're not going to hit that point, I'll be in touch, and we'll try to work out a way to help you get to that point if possible. Um, as I mentioned, we will have 2 exams, the midterm and the final. There are no quizzes, by the way, and all these will be completed very much the same way as all the other ones that you've probably taken with me, which is all through Blackboard. We don't do it during class time, and it's open book, open note, you know, heck, open internet, right? Like it can stop you. But I do use our textbook as the official repository of information upon which I base the tests. You know, so that's really kind of like your go-to for information. My standard late work policies also apply. And generally speaking, it's this: if I have a due date on something, uh, turn it in by then. That's the ideal, and get it all done and do it correctly, right? And if you do that, you're probably going to earn all your points. Um, if you turn in an assignment that's late, so let's say you're a few days late or something, you will see a reduction in the amount of points. Um, and as long as all the work is complete, you know, those impacts can actually be pretty minimal, you know. So if you're a day or two late, don't like go freaking out, you know. Just take your time, get the work done, get it in. So you lost a little bit, oh well, right? um, Not the end of the world, you can always make it up. Now, conversely, if you are in progress, and you guys, I always like to remind people of this one of my other policies is if you turn something in that shows me that you've made effort towards that work, and turn it in by the due date, I will then give you an extra week to turn it in with no late penalty. And so I really encourage you to do that. So like you're like, man, I'm not going to make that due date, but hey, I can get started on it and at least not take the late hit. And that way I don't have to work under duress, right? Because you know, every day that passes and your work's late, you kind of get that stress. And I get it. I've been a student and I don't want you guys to feel like that. I really want you to learn the stuff and incorporate it into your brains. The one rule that I do have, though, is once we get past 2 weeks late on an assignment, and in this class, that's even more huge than in a typical class. At most, you're getting half the points, and so don't get yourself in that situation. Please also be aware that because we're in an 8-week format, every week we're going to be covering twice as much material as we would uh, in the normal 14-week semester. Um, so covering twice as much stuff and doing twice as much homework. And so what, we have 4 hours on the books to meet on Monday nights, and that's only half the required face-to-face time. The other half comes from videos and reading. So it's really like 8 hours of class time. And I'm going to argue you should probably count on an hour or two minimum per chapter of homework. And so you're looking at, in my mind, like 10 to 12 hours a week is a reasonable expectation of time to spend on this one course at this pace. So please plan your time accordingly. If you have a super packed schedule and you're working like double shifts or something, maybe this isn't the right time to take it. That's one thing to consider. Um, but if you get caught in a snafu with scheduling or whatever, please reach out to me, you guys, because I can't help you out if I don't know your situation. And I am reasonable, if I know you got something going on. All right. The one hard deadline that I have that I can't break is nothing will be accepted beyond the last day of class. Sometimes I bend that a little bit, and I think the way I put it in the course calendar, I'm going to give you one extra day from the end of class to get some stuff in. But I have to post grades within 48 hours, and if I don't, then it doesn't look good on me, and sometimes I don't get paid if I don't do that. So there's the impetus. I do have the get out of homework free coupon. I think you guys know how this works at this point. 2 points on the table. You can use it to replace any regular assignment that you have at any point. If you're in a situation that's not good and it's throwing you off course with school, um, but you've been a good student thus far, whatever the situation might be, contact me and I'm happy to work out an incomplete situation for you, if necessary, to help you get stuff done and keep you moving forward rather than having to retake a course because you had a tragedy happen or something. In terms of the official dates and times for the class, they're listed here. So once again, the 1WY1 section, technically you're required to be here Mondays from 5:30 to 9:30 p.m. And then the 1W7A section, you are fully online and not required to attend Zoom, but you are always welcome to attend Zoom. And if I can convince a couple of people that are signed up for the Zoom portion, maybe to consider switching to the fully online, we don't even have to meet, So I'm just putting it out there as a possibility. And I'm not trying to not meet. I'm just putting it out there because some people don't realize that. And I just want you to be aware. Either way, I'm happy to stick out all 4 hours with you if needed during your class session. But I think what you guys will find is because when we have smaller efficient numbers, and then the other thing you'll discover is we get the third and fourth semester, all of you have kind of cleared all these hurdles to get here, so you guys are all on it. You get how it works, you have the tools, our procedures and all that, and um, most likely you're going to be successful in this field if you've gotten this far. And so I don't worry so much about you guys, frankly, in that regard. In terms of all the other important dates here, if you want to drop, you have about a week here to do that. After that, if I see you're non-participatory and not turning stuff in or communicating, I have a period through which I can drop you. We will not have a midterm grade posted because technically they post on Friday. But if it helps you, if you want, I could, when we get to halfway through the class, I could tell you where you stand, but you can kind of also figure that out yourself, I assume. If you choose to voluntarily withdraw, folks, excuse me, you have until July 29th to do so. And I do have the calendar here. We're going to look at that in Blackboard, though, but this is kind of the breakdown, our roadmap for the semester in kind of a rough outline form. But it tells you which chapters we're covering each week and then what is due during that week as well. From there, the syllabus is full of our standard college policies. Each one of these titles here is is linkable to the Gateway Student Handbook or other college resources that explains it in more detail. But please make sure you read through these. These are pretty boilerplate for all of our Gateway syllabi. I'm just going to remind you that we do have our tutoring support center um, that's available for you guys to take advantage of, and I do encourage you to use the tutors, especially if I'm not available. And we will talk about a couple more things, sort of related to syllabus as we kind of get out of here. But if you could all please at this point jump into the core shell, go to the syllabus discussion board, and please acknowledge receipt of the syllabus. And as I always remind students, until you acknowledge receipt of the syllabus, I will not grade any of your work. Right? So that I need to know that you're on board with what we have listed here policy-wise. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close the syllabus. Um, and if you guys need to find it, it is in the course shell in the left sidebar under the entry that says syllabus, calendar, and instructor information. And that's actually the spot in the course that I'm going to right now. So if you need to revisit that syllabus, here's a link right here to the document in my Google Drive. So you can access it. I also have posted in this area of Blackboard my summer schedule, and embedded in here also is my contact info, even though this is just an image, folks, so none of this stuff is clickable, but it does kind of convey the basic point. Now, the one thing that I think you guys might find helpful and useful, by the way, is that I do have office hours on the books while this class is running for the hour preceding the hour that, or when we're running the course. So from 4:30 to 5:30 on Mondays, if you need extra support, you can just pop into my Zoom room and ask away, or we'll work through whatever you got going there. What I do prefer generally is that you let me know that you're coming, and that way I will know to make sure that I'm there at the time that you plan on joining. But for the most part, you'll see that I'll typically just be in the room waiting for you. There are a couple of other office hour blocks here, so I do have some Tuesdays kind of midday, and then also Tuesday evening as well. And if those times don't work, just pop me an email. We can just kind of one-on-one Zoom. And if I happen to be online when you're emailing, hey, we just do it right away. Just get it over with. Another thing I might encourage you guys to do too, and I know some of you have done this already in previous classes, is hey, use the chat window and talk to each other and share contact information. You guys can form a study group, so if you want to work on stuff together or just ask each other questions. I find that to be extremely valuable, and I know that it's a little more limited when we're online like this and you don't think about doing it. But I find that students that talk to each other tend to do better, because maybe you're looking at an assignment and you're going, oh, what does he mean by this? And the other person understands, and maybe you don't, and clarity is achieved without having to ask the teacher or whatever. All right, so I am going to pause the recording here for just a second. Okay, we're going to be jumping now into the first unit that's posted, which is, of course, Unit 0, not Unit 1. And just to kind of quickly overview the intro to the course. And so I usually expect people that are completely online to kind of walk through this part themselves. But this little course overview is just kind of like a little dump from the syllabus on some of what I consider the more key points, including the course description and the competencies for the course, the books that we have that we're using, and then which technology and how to get a hold of me if you need to. I also have a little welcome message here, and you guys have probably read this one too many times, so we can just skip right over. I do have an intro video, and as I was checking this earlier today, I noticed it was from 2017. I'm like, well, it's 2021. It might not be a bad time to record a fresh one, so here we are recording it right now. And so I will post this video that I'm doing right now will end up under this posting here, and I will indicate. And this is the one thing you guys have to do as you're in this course is look at the post dates for all the videos because sometimes it is pertinent to the version of technology that you're using. And so like I said, if you're using an older version of the software, I probably have a video for it, so you can watch that one, and then your screens will match up exactly, which is kind of the main point. I do have links here to the syllabus acknowledgement and the introductions, and you know, for those of you that kind of know each other, and you can kind of keep this brief, but I do find that sometimes people have gotten this far in the program and have never met or never talked. So just share something about yourself that you want to share. Um, you know, you don't have to take it too far, by the way. You don't have to get all personal. It's also not a bad place that if you're willing to do study groups or exchange information with people, you can feel free to share there whatever you wish to whatever level you want. But just understand whatever you share there can be seen by everybody in the class. I think it's also kind of nice to get to know people. So, hey, tell people something interesting about yourself. Uh, maybe they'll have a different opinion of you. Hopefully, a better one, right? All right. Um, from here, folks, I'm going to take us in to Unit 1, and we're going to start digging into this stuff. But I'm going to stop this video here. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back and start digging into material. So this will be a 5-minute break. We'll just call it 7 o'clock. We'll come back at 7:05. So I'll see you guys then.